Hi there, welcome back. Today we're going to do a simple video about safety. Now, safety is the number one priority. This is the most important thing in a Waldorf woodworking classroom, is that the children are working safely. And they depend on you, the teacher, to know the safety rules. And you need to teach it to them. And so you need to first look around your wood shop. You need to identify anything that could be a hazard to a kid or to an adult. So if the floor is uneven and you notice that, and you might want to point that out to the children that the floor is uneven, please be careful when you're walking, because you don't want to trip over some little crack in the floor. If there's sharp edges on the equipment that you're working with, point out that. What I do is I have a rhythm that I work with the children every single class, where they line up out in front of the front door of the woodworking shop and they wait for me to open the door. When I open the door, I greet each child and I shake their hand. I look at them in the eye and I say their name, good morning or good afternoon. And I have the eye contact, the acknowledgement of them in front of me and me in front of them. And this is a rhythm that they get used to. If I don't do it, they'll say, hey, Mr. Bryant, you didn't shake my hand today. So they like to have the rhythm, and this is another way of staying safe, is to have a constant rhythm they can depend on. So when they come in the door, I shake their hand, and I tell them to go sit down. And they find their place at one of the working tables, and once they've all sat, then I will make any announcements that I need to make for the day. I always point out and remind them of what the safety rules are of our wood shop. There's many of them, but the main ones are maybe 5 or 6 main ones, the main safety rules that I teach them. So first of all, you must have a safety kit in your classroom. Now, and you need to know how to use it. And it needs to be fully stocked with the Band-aids and the things you're going to need. So in this case, I have these little Q-tips in case I have to put any of the antibiotic on their cut. So I put it on the antibiotic and put it on the cut, and then I put the bandage over the top of it. Okay, now these are very common. I'm not going to open it, but you know what a Band-aid is, or a bandage. And that's that. Now, sometimes children are very sensitive. Their ears are very sensitive to the banging and the knocking and the sanding and the noises in the wood shop. So I always keep some ear plugs or some headphones so the kids can keep their ears protected. I also have goggles. These are not goggles, but I have goggles in case there's too much sand or sanding or dust in the air. This is a simple little kit with the scissors on it and tweezers. Now, this is something that you do use often in a wood shop, are tweezers. So the children, sometimes they get the splinter in their finger. So you'll have to take that out for them. And there they are, in good shape. You put it away, and it's all ready for the next time. You're the first one to give the children their very first aid, and then once they're stabilized and they're in good shape, you may have to send them to the office. If it's a bad enough cut, may have to go to the doctor. Now, when you're using these wood carving knives, you want to be able to carefully grab the end of the case and pull directly out. Okay? You do not want to hold it like this and pull it out, because as you're pulling it out, you can slide the knife along your finger, and then it's going to hurt and there's going to be blood. So teach them the proper way. When they're holding this, they hold it at the end like this, the knife, and pull straight out. Okay? Now when they're carving, okay, you need to actually point out the sharp edge and the dull edge. Okay, now you would think that that's pretty obvious, but it's not obvious for all children, and especially at the very beginning when they're first learning. and you show them the different techniques of how to carve in a safe way. Now, they do not carve like this. This is the wrong way to carve. Do you see why? The tip of my knife is so close to my hand that I could easily slice my hand. So you always want to carve away from yourself when possible. Sometimes you'll carve down onto the table like this. Now, if you don't have a woodworking board here, eventually that's going to end up damaging your table. So, believe it or not, this is a safety item. This woodworking board. And I have another video where I show you how to make these. They're very simple. And if you have this, you'll notice that these lips, they're helping you by going over the edge of the board of the table, and then you're going to use this lip here to push against. So you don't have to hold the wood so hard in your hand. So right now I'm squeezing very hard. I have this asymmetrical movement that happens where one hand's pulling, one hand's pushing. Now, if you have a woodworking board, all you need to do is to push that like this, pushing up against the edge, or laying it flat like this, and you're able to carve in a very safe way. So the woodworking board is definitely a good safety item to have in the wood shop. Now, so the rule of that one is never carve towards yourself. If you're holding it like this, you would never carve like this. If you're holding it like this, you would never carve like this. Even if you're carving like this, you're making a notch in your wood, you want to move your hand. Cut that way, cut that way, cut that way. You see, so you're always cutting away from yourself. I cannot tell you how many times I've had kids injure themselves by cutting a notch in a piece of wood like this. Because what can happen is the wood breaks, the knife travels through the wood and into the finger. That's happened many times. So always try to have them carving away when they're making a notch. Okay? Now, you can also use your woodworking board for the notch making. Okay? You can hold it like this. Now, this is where the danger is, when you're going like this. Okay, so don't do it that way. Practice yourself. Get really good at carving so that you're not carving towards yourself whenever you can. Now, sometimes you have to carve towards yourself. So if you have to carve towards yourself like this, then don't push the knife like this. Push the knife like this, down. So I'm carving down, 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 down. Okay, you get the idea. All right, now, next thing are these guys. Our woodcut knife, made by Woodpecker. And these are very handy, but they will definitely poke you just as fast as the knife will cut you. So let me show you how to use this in a safe way. Usually they're using this particular knife, this particular blade. It's a gouge, and they're usually going something like this. Okay? Never have the kids carving this way. Or even if it's in a vise, like this, never have your hand out here in front if you're carving that way. I cannot tell you how many times I've had kids poke themselves with these. Okay? Another way to use it is like this, carving down onto your woodworking board. Okay, and also you want to make sure your knives are always very, very sharp. If they're not sharp, they're dangerous. Okay, so when you're using a saw, you always want to be careful where your hand is. You don't want to have your hand anywhere near where the saw is going to slide out of its little wrapper. So in this case, I'm holding it on the top, I'm pushing, I'm pulling it out, and we're in good shape now. So I'm able to hold my wood and cut it however I want it. And I use my woodworking board as much as I can. Simple as that. So this is the Japanese saw. Make sure your hand's out of the way. And same thing for the bigger standard handsaw. Okay, there we go. Simple as can be. I'm not holding it up in the air. I'm not trying to do something like this. You always want to make sure your wood is firmly secured by your woodworking board or your table guard or whatever you want to call it. Okay, very hard to injure yourself with this tool, so I'm not even going to talk about it. Now, there's another type of tool like the big daddy, granddaddy of these little gouges, and that's these guys. Okay, you see it's very similar. It's just one's very big, one's very small. Same idea. You want to make sure that your hand is away from your project and you're carving very carefully away from yourself. Okay, and if you need to turn it, you can turn it. Okay. Now, sometimes the child will need to use a mallet. Okay. Maybe they're cutting an outline. Okay, so if they're cutting an outline, this tool here is more of a chisel. It's a straighter edge. And so now I don't use little tiny hammers, okay? I use a very big mallet. That way they don't have to watch it hit. Their eye is down here where the cut is. They're not looking up here. They're looking down here. Okay, so we'll have a video where you're going to make one of these. Very simple tool to make. Any grade could make them, even third grade. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to use the rasp. So this is our rasp. Okay, this is a very good rasp, made in Japan, called Shinto rasp. Now there's many different types of rasps, but this is the one I prefer to use. And you can use your woodworking board again to give it a back up. And now you just simply, okay, you're working your project across the grain. Okay, and eventually this is going to become round. Now you could also work like this. You see that okay? Just got to make sure your leg's not going to get stabbed by this. And this is a perfectly fine way to use this tool. With this tool, sometimes what happens is they'll be rasping away and they'll look away from their work. They take their eye off the work. And now, you know, I know where everything is, but sometimes my finger might get in the way out here and I don't realize it. And right there is what happens, is that you miss, or you get your wood, but you also get your finger at the same time. And that's how kids hurt themselves with these rasps, by not totally paying attention, by trying to hold it like this, and sometimes it'll slip out of their hand and they'll get their thumb or their finger. And I've never had a kid have to go to the hospital from getting hit by one of these, but it definitely hurts and it bleeds. And it makes them realize that these are no toy. These are definitely tools that can hurt you. So they need to respect every single tool they have. Now the hammer, rarely do they ever use a hammer in my wood shop. Okay, because if you cannot use a metal hammer on a wooden handle. That will damage your tool. It'll destroy the tool. In fact, look, this one someone has done that before. I can see it. Do you see how this got a chunk missing out of it? That's because someone hit this with a hammer, with a metal hammer, and it broke the wood off. Now, when you're hitting with a wooden mallet, it's much more safe. The tool is in better shape, and you don't have to replace it. Now, this particular tool right here, oh God, I don't even want to guess how much this thing costs, but probably about minimum of $50. Okay, $50. That's pretty expensive for one little tool. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers the basic tools that we're going to be using in the wood shop. Now, obviously, you don't want the children to run around the wood shop. You don't want to have them playing games with each other. You want to have them sitting down while they're working with their project. If they've gone to my desk or wherever I've given them the knife, they need to carefully carry that knife in such a way that it's not going to be out like this. You don't want them walking around the wood shop carrying their knife like this. Then you want to make sure that their finger is resting on the dull side of the knife and it's slightly beyond the tip. Okay, not on the tip, because if they bump into something, they're going to poke themselves. But you want to have it on the dull part of the side of the knife with it barely touching over the edge, if you can see that. Now, if I run into something, I'm running into a finger and not the knife blade. Okay? So I have these tables. These tables are good for 4 students, 1 at each corner. Okay, they should not sit close together in the middle. They do want to sit next to each other. They love each other. They care about each other. They want to be close as possible. But I can tell you that that's a recipe for a disaster. You also have to keep track of children that are left-handed and right-handed. So if you have a left-handed student, you don't want him sitting here carving like this, and the right-handed students over here carving like this, because their hands are that close together. So you just simply tell the left-handed student to sit on this side of the desk, and vice versa for the right-handed. Now their tools are much further apart, and they're all much safer. It's common sense. You have to observe your students and know the students and remember those kind of little details. It's easy to forget. Now in my wood shop here, I have a number of power tools that are electric tools. They're very dangerous, and the children they know that they're never to touch them, much less turn them on. They should never turn them on. They should not even touch them because they don't know how to turn them on and turn them off, and I don't teach that until high school. So the children know that all the electrical tools that are in the wood shop, off limits. I also have a rule that if I have not taught them the safe way of using a tool, that they do not have permission to use it. So if they see a tool laying there and they don't know how to use it yet, they're not supposed to just pick it up and start using it. And I see them do it, I'll tell them to put it down. And I said, did I teach you how to use that? No. Well, would you like me to teach you how to use it? Yes. Well, come on over. Or I'll go to them. So I let them talk a little bit while they're carving, as long as their eye is on their work. So often, I'll have a student that likes to work and talk, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. And as long as they can keep their eye focused on their work, and they're not looking around or looking away while their knife is going, then I'll let them talk. But as soon as they start looking around, no way. I'll tell them, okay, either talk and get a 0 credit for the day, or work. But you can't do both. If some kids can, but if that kid can't, then I'll just tell them no. Sometimes I'll have to seat them in different seating arrangements around the room because they talk too much. Okay, and talking is fine. Talking too much, not good. You need to always have the knife, the cutting side of the knife, of the tool, whatever you're using. You always need to be watching that. Okay? You don't look over something else. You're always looking right at the blade. And if you do have to look at something else, then you stop carving and then you look at it. Then you can go back to the carving again. Now in my class, what I do is I have a bell. And what I will do is I'll ring that bell when it's time for the children to pay attention because I have an announcement. It could be that a child has injured themselves. I need to focus on the child. So I'll ring that bell and tell everyone to put their project down while I'm doing the first aid for the child that injured themselves. It may be that I want to tell them it's time to clean up. So I always use a bell to kind of signal that it's time to pay attention. Okay, so we covered a lot of different little safety items here in this class today. One thing I did not talk about is a rule that I have in the classroom where there are no food, no beverages allowed in the wood shop. I don't want them to spill things on, or water or tea or whatever on my tables or on the floors. I don't want food particles in here that'll attract bugs. It's also a distraction. So no food, no beverage in the wood shop. And I'm trying to think. Oh, this is the last thing I want to tell you. But the kids should never be allowed to throw anything in the wood shop. No, that's a no, no, no. If they do that, if they throw anything, just kind of kidding around with their neighbor, that's it. They have to put their tools away and they go stand by the door until it's time to be dismissed. So I'm pretty strict about the safety rules in my shop. I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky kind of a teacher, but when it comes to safety rules, I'm very, very strict. So I hope you're strict with your students so that they can be safe and you can be safe. And I hope you enjoy all these projects we're going to do. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll see you in the next video.